with a 64 present. A Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi there, welcome to C64 Playguide and Review. In this week's episode we'll be checking out New York City, developed by Greg Nelson, published by Synapse Software in 1984. You saw I'm third on the high score table, so let's press fire and let's see if we can beat that on this playthrough. In this game, it's our job to survive 1 week in New York City. We start on day 1, Monday, and we have to survive 9 to 5, and at the end of that time, our cash for the day will be rewarded. But in the meantime, you can see we have 800 cash, but if we collide with a tow truck, that will unfortunately destroy our vehicle, and well, that will take us in an ambulance or back to the hospital, and we'll have to pay out $200 for that privilege. And that's the end of our vehicle. Now we'll just have to walk around New York City on foot, and the destinations that we must visit are listed in the bottom left corner. You can see SU and CC will stand for the initials of a building somewhere around New York, and CC actually stands for the City Corporation Center. So if we can find that, the City Corp Center will be around here someplace. The streets of New York City are paved with cars, it looks like, and if we collide with one of those, it's going to be another quick trip to the hospital, so we better be on our best behaviour and stick to the sidewalk. And everything in this game costs cash. Even if you do save the car, that will take refueling at the garage, and piling in there will cost cash, so it's sometimes best to wreck that car. So here we go, City Corp Center. In here it reveals a sub-game, and what we must do is to collect that bagel at the top of the screen. And unfortunately there is no platform to that bagel, so what we must do is to lure a guy over there, and he'll destroy a platform, and he'll also rebuild a platform for us. I think there is potentially a way for us to build a platform, although I cannot remember how to do that on this playthrough. But you can see the enemies there building platforms for us, so as long as we climb a ladder adjacent to that point, then we should be able to make it. Perhaps we should pull diagonal to make our own platform, or perhaps that doesn't in fact work. But by whatever means, we have access now to that bagel, so let's run up there and collect that. And that won't give us any cash, unfortunately, in this game. No, all the cash will be awarded on day 2, and on day 1 we have to survive with what we've got. So look at that, the enemy is rebuilding there the ladders. So the enemies aren't very smart, and sometimes they can walk side by side, so it only looks like there's one on the screen. But surely if I can split these like this, then it shouldn't be too hard to grab the item. And so these sub-games, well, this one in particular isn't hard, and it can be quite fun outwitting the nitwits. And once we collect the item, let's escape the bottom of the level. It's 9:40 in the morning, and we've already completed our first job. You can see our job list has now changed to SU, still no idea what that means. And we're just going to speed that walking up slightly there. And the UN, well, that's the UN building, which should be on the coast if it's anywhere near New York. And if this map is correct, it should be in the top right corner. But this game gives us a new map every time we start the game, so you can't always find exactly the same building in the right places. And the zoo and the Central Park will usually be in the middle. What we can do is actually take a shortcut, hopefully, by taking the subway, and the subway reveals yet another game. In here we have to first collect the token in order to get the ticket, and that token is unprotected, but as soon as we collect that, well, as soon as we make our way towards that, we'll be fired upon by gangsters. If we press the fire button, we can make a jump over those bullets, and now we have our token, we can now board the train. Unfortunately, if you get killed, then you'll have to go all the way back to the start again, lose some money, and go back for that token all over again. And dodging these bullets isn't particularly easy, but it is possible, of course. All you have to do is to have the correct timing, and you can jump and maneuver, even though that jump is very small. And then the next choice is to decide whether we want to go north or south, or east or west perhaps in this game, because everything runs in the east to west direction. And having made it to this arrow, what we have to do is jump aboard the train. If we don't jump, then we won't get aboard the train, and if we don't avoid those bullets, of course we won't get anywhere near that train. I think it's great to have a subway system in this game, but unfortunately it's very difficult to navigate that, and every single subway station is exactly the same minigame, so there's no variation on those. And all these bullets, well, they appear at random, so sometimes you can be very lucky and unlucky as well, particularly when a train is coming and that momentarily blocks those bullets there, so you have to dodge the bullet and jump on the train, and maybe even anticipate bullets appearing at the last moment. Now we get to ride to the next stop on the subway, and yes, it's just the one stop in this game, which takes us all the way from Central Park, from east to west. And unfortunately you can see at the bottom corner it says zoo, so one of our tasks is to actually reach the zoo, so let's speed that up and walk all the way back in there. In the zoo, if we press the fire button, we can lay down a track, and what we must do on this sub game is to isolate as many of these critters as possible, and if every single critter is in its own pen with above 90% of the screen cleared, then we can make our way to the exit. If we collide with any of these animals, then we'll lose another 50 credits, or perhaps $50 in this game, with it being New York City, so it's important to get those in boxes as soon as possible, and then that saves tracking around the level. Unfortunately, you saw I put the critter in a too small box, and when we return to the top of the screen and press fire, that will actually freeze the critters in their pens, and so when that critter is actually put in freeze mode, that will mean we can navigate that area. And just to prove that, if I press that fire button there, but look at that, it has not cleared away that half of the screen, and there is no way to clear away that half of the screen now because there is no critters in that area, and there's no way to take back our fencing either. And unless every one of those is in a pen of its own, then we won't get to press that fire button and clear those. And you can see I'm having to get into that pen and branch these two guys away and separate those, otherwise it won't count. So this sub-game is deceptively hard, and sometimes you can make this job quite easy by branching off there, but you can see all the empty space on the screen means I've already ruined my chances to complete this level, if indeed we manage to pen off all these critters. The sound effects are basic in this game, but at least we don't have the embarrassment of having the title music in the game, because that would be pretty dire indeed. The sound effects provide just enough atmosphere in this game, and outside we get the beeping of horns, but inside we get the padding around of critters, and that's not too bad. Luckily, it doesn't cost us any cash to pen those guys in, but everything else in this game certainly does, and if we collide with the traffic too many times or get stuck in the subway, unfortunately the subway is too dangerous, and venturing down there we'll probably lose half of our cash reserves, and we gain very little by riding the subway. As you can see, it's probably quicker to walk all the way over rather than catch that for what meagre gains it gives us across the city. So this game is very atmospheric and it's got a great charm of its own, but I can't help feeling that it could have been so much more. But then again, this was released in 1984, and we've seen games that have influenced other games already, and if you didn't need me to remind you, this definitely reminds me of Grand Theft Auto and all those open world sandbox adventure games that we take for granted these days. That sound means that we've completed this level, and if we re-entered this building we can play that level again, but usually as soon as we leave our destination will change. PO is listed there, and that's the post office, and we still have the UN building, so it's great that it gives us 2 job offers and we can choose each one as long as we know our destination. And if we don't, that means a lot of padding around this huge landscape and the random generated landscape. But this post office is right here, so let's check that out. Unfortunately, this is probably the hardest and the worst of all the sub-games. What we have to do is, yes, you can leave if you really want to do that, and I'd really recommend that in the post office. But if you do choose to stay, what we have to do is to collect the letter highlighted in green, and that will disappear at random, as you can see. Then we have to negotiate our way through those blue trucks, avoid the guard dog, place that letter on a vacant position where the stamps are. You can see the vacant position in the center, and then that will get stamped, and then we then take that letter, ride on the ladder, and then hopefully collide with the green mailbox at the end of the level. And if all that sounds too complicated for its own good, that's because it is. And if you manage to get past these blue crates, well, you have to time that with the black in the background there, and the guard dog means that we can only just slip in very quickly, and if we collide with those blue crates obviously we'll lose cash, and I was on 0 cash, that's why I was taking my time. But that was an incredible hard level, so I wouldn't even recommend going into the post office. And that's the new high score, but that's not really anywhere. It's a shame that we get a car only to smash it up, and if we collide with any other vehicle then that's fine, but as soon as we either run out of gas or we collide with those incessant tow trucks, then that's our car over, and sometimes we can't even decide whether we're driving in forward or reverse. The best thing to do is to reach our destination quickly, and then by holding down the fire button while that car is in a lay-by or one of those car park spaces in front of any building, then we'll jump out of that car and we can enter that building. But if you don't hold down the fire in one of those car park spaces, then the car will stay there, and as soon as it collides with the tow truck, then that's it. So yes, you can leave cars lying around this level, but the gas is pretty stingy, and you'll have to return to the garage pretty quickly in order to keep that thing maintained. If you ride that car off, you can see the car in the garage foyer, but again, we cannot collect that car until day 2, because that will take a day to repair. So you can see we can hover over our own car, but we cannot enter that thing, unfortunately. As you can see, it's pretty darn difficult to survive one whole day in New York City, mostly because we have to either avoid traffic or we get stuck in a sub-game. So, well, what can we find? The zoo or GT? That's the Grant's tomb. Well, General Grant is probably laughing right now because I've witnessed yet another trip to the hospital, and it can be infuriating and quite boring when that keeps happening to you. But at least we do get an overview of the map, and sometimes that can reveal the building that we need to find. In this case, we need to find the MA, which is actually the Mart, which I'm actually walking straight past at the moment, but that's because the time is due to reach 12 PM, and at 12 noon what we find is the MA will automatically change to AU, which is Automat, and in the Automat is another one of those subquests in this game. In the Automat sub-level, we get to face off against a computer opponent. By touching the top door, we can launch a hamburger into that room, and by touching the bottom door, we can leave at any point. We have a total of 1 hour in the Automat, so let's press the fire button above the top door, and that will dispense a burger. What we have to do is to track that thing down, and hopefully the computer opponent won't get hold of that. Every burger costs $10, it appears, so we don't find those cheap, and those things appear at random, so there's never any knowing where those things are going to be. So usually if you spawn two, you can let the enemy collect one, and you can usually fence off the other. But those things are semi-intelligent, and so you have to really block those in, otherwise they'll try every trick in the book to escape. I think maybe if you collect 10 burgers, then that's the level over, but again, that will take some cash. And if we don't have the cash at this point, as you can see, we are running out. If you let the computer collect too many of those, then you'll basically be wasting your time. The good news is the Automat level only lasts until 1 PM, and if you wait for that time to elapse, or if you leave this building, then you can simply wait that out and you don't have to spend all this cash on burgers. But if you do want to do that, that's another one of these sub-games, and it's quite fun. There isn't too much to worry about, not like the post office. But again, if you collide with the enemy, that will lose a significant portion of our cash, and that hampers our chances of surviving until 5 PM. So you can see the graphics are fairly primitive in New York City, and so is the sound, but the atmosphere is okay, and it does create some kind of gameplay if you're willing to spend some time with this and walk around this huge city, getting to know every single unique level. In the main, the levels consist of the first level we saw in this play guide, i.e. the columns and the ladders, and we have to get the bagel at the top, and virtually all the games are like that except for the ones that we've seen in this play guide, and they simply get harder as the game goes on, and they don't even reset when we move on to the second day. They just remove lots of platforms from those sub-levels, and they make those sub-levels very much harder with just a lot of ladders stuck in the middle of the screen. You can see on this particular playthrough we have actually preserved our vehicle, but we only have 100 cash in the bank. So if we hold down fire from where we left that, we can hopefully jump in and cruise back around the city, and we have to find the sweet spot, of course, when we hold down that fire button, otherwise it won't work. And this is a pretty old game. Car is in the lot. Well, perhaps that ran out of gas, I'm not quite sure. But we find the parking lot is the lot that we started with at the beginning of the game, and so if we turn to that, perhaps we'll find our vehicle. So let's try to find that. But I have respect for this game. I think it went on to inspire many other games, and in its day I found padding around this game pretty enjoyable. It's just that the mini games weren't so great, and I wish there'd have just been a little more variety on offer. I like how it gives the player a different map every time they start the game, and you can see Grant's tomb there, wasn't there on our previous playthrough. And although the car reminds us of Grand Theft Auto, unfortunately the car is a little difficult to steer when we don't know which is back and forward in that thing, and I think the car could have been put to slightly better use. So whilst you watch me walking straight past the car lot where our vehicle is supposed to be, on our way to another early grave at 1 PM on a Monday afternoon, I'll just say the scores were 64% on the Lemon 64 website. Thank you for viewing another Lemon 64 play guide and review.